All right, now it's time for me to introduce my guest, Reid Holmes. He's a branding expert, a speaker, and author. And after 30 years at an ad agency as its chief marketing officer, Reid has had an epiphany and he's been interrupted. He said he's tired of seeing brands just interrupt people and wasting billions chasing transactions, leaving customers saturated by brand indifference and high price sensitivity. He believes that branding in the digital era is about proving you care. Whether you're a B2C or B2B marketer, everything is about B to H. And he says we're all human and people need to talk to people that way. Reid has a plan to help you live your values so that you can attract, engage, and keep like-minded customers with what Reid calls reverse targeting. He's the author of the brand new book, Appreciated Branding. So for more information, head over to appreciatedbranding.com. Reid, welcome to the Smallbizchat podcast.
Thanks, Melinda. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be your guest here. Thanks.
So tell us, Reid, how did you get on this journey that you decided to stop working for the man and start working with the little people, right? How did you go from all those big brands that you've worked with, what H&R Block and on and on and on? You've worked with some of the biggest brand campaigns in the world, and you finally said enough already. So talk to us about your journey.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. I think for me, I spent 30 years in the boardrooms of America presenting big ideas for multi-million-dollar campaigns. And I realized as my kids reached high school that that's a pretty ephemeral pursuit. I go in, I create something, it does its job, and then it goes away. And when my kids were getting out of high school, I realized, what am I doing to make the world a better place? Like, is there something I can do with my skill set that can help with that? And I spent some time thinking about it. I looked over all the work I've done in my career, and I found a commonality that's kind of like a win-win-win, where it's going to help businesses do better and be more meaningful as a brand. It's going to drive higher business results, particularly for performance marketing, which is not necessarily a small business pursuit. And I've worked with lots of small businesses too, but in the bigger kind of marketing world, performance marketing does much better when you have a well-defined brand. And so, and I would say in some cases it's been proven to at least 4x better. And then I think lastly is the third win of this is that by doing this kind of thing, the world will become a better place. And that's my ultimate goal. How do I leave the world a better place? I mean, the old Indian line was, we borrow the world from our children.
Yes, definitely. So your book is called Appreciated Branding. It's a term that you have coined. Why don't you explain to us what, shameless plug, why don't you tell us what is appreciated branding?
Yeah, I think to me, it's the next stage of what branding needs to become. Because we've gone from what is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Rosser Reeves, but back in the 1920s, he coined a thing called the unique selling proposition. And that was a very rational statement. It's well, to use a Saturday Night Live reference, it's a floor polish that's also a dessert topping. It's a very rational kind of appeal, or soften your hands while you do the dishes, or the quicker picker upper. Very rational, very logical appeals, and that worked for a long time, and it still works to a certain extent. But back in in the interruption model, and you had mentioned interruption, when the interruption model started back in the 50s after the war. So many products were new and different, and consumerism was just getting up on its feet. And, this kind of interruption model worked because it's just like, I've got a new washing machine. I need a soap to run it. Soap operas were the perfect thing to kind of advertise that, right? People had the bandwidth to abide these kind of interruptions. So now it's 50, 60, what is it? 65 years later. And we're interrupted everywhere. we are literally pinged and dinged and texted, and I'm reminded of that old video of the poor woman who was responding to a text walking through a mall, and she fell into a fountain, because she was not paying attention. The human mind has a finite amount of room for interruption and information processing, and the nowadays I think the attention span is shorter than a goldfish. It's down to like 2.7, 3 seconds, and that, which speaks to a lot of what Letitia was saying. You've got to be providing things that are of value that attract people. That's what appreciated branding is. And I would crystallize it as doing basically selling. You're not just showing that you care about yourself. You're showing that you care about the people you're trying to attract. So are you solving a problem that they don't recognize they have? That's essentially what appreciated branding is.
So you mentioned unique value proposition, but I know in your book you talk about unique emotional solution. So tell me what is that? Okay.
So as a good example, I have a couple examples in my book, and that's a term I coined because when you look at a lot of what the bigger and better brands are doing these days, and I've realized that I've done some of this in my career as I look back on some of the work I did, you're not solving a rational problem. You're solving an emotional problem. You've found an emotional place to be. And I can give you two different examples of that. Number one, from, let's say, a small business perspective. Let's say you're a tennis coach and you want to get more tennis lessons. And so you say, hey, I'm a tennis coach who wants tennis lessons. He might get a little business here and there, but what emotional problem is he solving? It's a very rational promise. Oh, tennis lessons. Do I want tennis lessons? No. Okay. But if you say something like, who has kids that are bouncing off the walls and need to be busy to give you a moment's rest? People are going to go, oh, that's me. I get that. That is me. I would actually, I would love to give my kids tennis lessons because I would have some time to myself. I would get they would get exposed to a good activity that will help them. Hopefully they'll have for life. And, I feel like emotionally I'm doing a good thing for both me and my kids. So you can kind of see the difference there. So on a bigger scale, and I do this, I have this example in my book, and I wish I had done this campaign. I didn't, but I found it and I'm so glad I did. And it's such a wonderful example. But so in India, there are basically, my understanding is there's two basically laundry detergents that are constantly fighting for share. And they're both trying to be louder than they were last time to get a little more far right of the decimal point share next time. And this is basically, you're relegating yourself to a price decision because the laundry business back in the 50s was 3 or 4 different brands. And now go into Walmart and look at the laundry aisle. It's 30 feet long and 8 feet high with brands all solving the same problem. And that's something that Letitia was saying earlier is just like, are you doing anything unique? What is it that is different about you or how you want to be or solve your problem? So what they did in India is they launched a campaign for this brand called Ariel, where it wasn't, hey, we get whiter whites or we do more bright colors. They realized from a data point, and most of these ideas come from a data point that's a real truth about human existence and human life. And that's why I say B to H. And in this case, they found this data point that 95% of the people in India still thought laundry was a woman's job. And so Ariel came out and said, is that right? I mean, we're just throwing it out there. And they had a hashtag they called Share the Load. Share the Load took off. I mean, they had commercials that showed, a woman coming home from work. Her husband's reading the paper on the couch. She's picking up toys. She's trying to get dinner on the table. She's on the phone with her last minute thing from work. She's texting and emailing. And her son shouts from upstairs, is my green shirt clean? I need it tonight. And a line just comes up and says, why is laundry still just a woman's job? And it killed. Sales went up 76%. 76%. You don't get that from promotional marketing.
Right.
And the reason that happened is because women who buy laundry detergent said, thank you. Thank you for giving me some air cover here, because I've been swimming in laundry for 30 years, you know? So that's what I'm talking about. That is appreciated branding. An act of good was done. And I want to make I want to make a point here. There's a very big difference between purpose-based advertising and purpose-based marketing, because that's really, I think a lot of people see that as this grand altruism, like we're replanting trees in the rainforest. But it would be much more meaningful to me and much more helpful to me in my daily life if you replanted trees in the neighborhood where I live. Now I'm like, oh, thank you. Thanks for doing that. This is something I see every day and I can truly appreciate. So that hopefully that helps you kind of understand the difference between where I think branding needs to go to break through, because we're all getting 10,000 messages a day. I don't know what to care about. I don't even have time to pay attention to stuff. If you're talking to me on a values channel that I already care about, you're going to get my attention and you're going to be much more meaningful to me as I go forward.
I love that. Talking to people on a values channel. I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to give you credit, Reid, the first time I use it, but know that I'm going to use that. But let's talk about, are there key components to an appreciated branding strategy? Is it you got to dig into the data? You got to find the data point?
Well, I think some of the key components are generally, first thing you have to do is ask a question. Are you rationally unique in the world? Is what you sell or the service or product you sell, is it unique enough that on its own merits is like a thank you? So when Uber came out, for example, completely unique, completely changed the category, and it needed explanation because it was a rational promise. Now they're more competitive and they have to appeal to things and find different ways to appeal based on more of an unique emotional solution, right? So they're starting to do more of that, because now the category is getting, although that's not a great example of a much more crowded category, because it's still pretty open. But if you think about, candy bars is another example I have in the book. Finally, Snickers realized that packed with peanuts, Snickers really satisfies. It's kind of an indulgence message, a rational message about the rational benefits of that product that isn't necessarily very persuasive, because you're selling the category. You're basically selling indulgence. Snickers finally figured out, well, what's a unique emotional solution that we can solve here? Oh, I've got it. Here's an insight. And this is another one of the things that these things have in common. It comes out of an insight that hasn't been recognized and nobody owns yet. And their insight was, when you're hungry, you're just not performing your best. Snickers can be that solution, that unique emotional solution. So now Snickers is, you're not yourself when you're hungry, grab a Snickers. And then you got Betty White on the Super Bowl, playing a guy, who's bonking. He doesn't have the energy, and it was a global campaign, and it killed, and it did great. But that's the shift. You have to shift from, okay, I'm either contributing to a ton of noise, and therefore, if I'm getting through, people are going to go, okay, I'll consider you, but it's really about price. Or you're doing something where you go, oh, they get me. They care about me. They're doing something to help me recognize a problem I didn't realize I had. And that's really cool. And I want to give them my attention and my business.
Well, what are some of the challenges with this, though, right? Because every brand doesn't fit into this "we care about you" box, right? Sometimes your toilet tissue is just toilet tissue, right? You know what I mean? Like, are there challenges around using this philosophy with just any product or service?
It takes work, but you need to find ideas that are, if you think about a Venn diagram, what is it you do? What is it, what are the values of the business or the company, and you have to make sure that you're true to that. Now, there may be values to I'm trying to think if there was another example. Another example in the book, for example, is for an alcoholic beverage. Okay. So what there's a brand called Rua Vieja. It's a Spanish brand of liqueur. It's kind of like a what is that?
Bourbon, cognac.
Yeah, but it's like the stuff you drink around the holidays. It's God, I can't think of it. It's a chocolatey kind of a anyway.
Oh, I know. Oh, Kahlua? Is it like Kahlua?
Yeah, that kind of thing, right? So it's a liqueur. So they're competing, and you might think, well, how could a liqueur be an appreciated brand? I mean, how do you create appreciation for a brand like that? Well, what they did is they started looking around, and they're like, well, what are the moments that this brand is used for? Well, people use it, or this product even, that no one else has capitalized on. So they realize that people drink liqueur and liquor and these types of things when they're sitting with their friends, when they're having after work or doing something together. So what they did is they realized and they found a tool that happened to exist in Spain. And I need to dig out. I'd love to learn more about this, but as an example, it's really pertinent here. There's a tool that existed where you could go. Actually, I think they created it they created it as an online tool. And that's another thing that I should mention is one of the commonalities of an appreciated branding approach is that it always has a hub, share the load hashtag. In this case, their idea was we need to spend more time together. And the motivator behind that was you could go to this website and you could put in a friend, how old they are, or a relative or whatever, and it would literally kind of go through some machinations and some kind of algorithm, and it would say you have 4 hours left in your life with this person, and they would basically go because people work, things get canceled, people have trips, and they really go. You might think you're 50 now and you've got 30 years left, but in reality, when life comes and all the things you have to do come along, you really only have 10 to 12 hours left that you're going to spend time with this person. So spend it wisely and enjoy that time. And that's where this idea of we have to spend more time together came. And in that case, sales went up 46% because it had that unique emotional solution. You're not just selling me liqueur, and you're not selling it to me on the rational benefits of taste or variety or whatever. You're saying, you might not realize this, but the amount of time you have left to spend with your loved ones isn't as much as you thought. Take some time and do that. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for figuring that out for me. I really appreciate that because I do love these people and I do want to spend more time with them. They did an online video, almost a documentary about this, and they had people were crying. They didn't realize that they just didn't have that much time. And so that's where this really starts to take root is you've got the opportunity in whatever your business is, whatever your product is, whatever your service is, look at the usage times that it gets used. Look at what surrounds it. Look at cultural cues. Look how the world has changed. In the laundry example, and I feel like I'm going off here like so I'll shut up in a second. But the laundry example, it's always the same question, but the answer is different. So in the 50s, the question was, how do we help women do laundry? And the answer back then was one capful does a whole load or whatever, a very rational promise. The answer to that question, how do we help women get their laundry done, is they need some help. Let's get them some help. Because this is crazy that they're still doing all of everybody's laundry. So that's another commonality is it's usually the same question. It's just like, what has changed in society or culture or that kind of thing that you can provide a different perspective on or a different answer that people go, oh my God, thank you I'd never even thought of that. That's really helpful.
I love it. I love it. All right, Reid, what is the best business advice you've ever been given?
It actually comes from a book, and it's a book called Think and Grow Rich. And it sounds like it's about, how to get rich, but it really is about a rich life. And it's about deciding what you want and letting the universe help you get there. And that's more of the journey I'm on right. I know it sounds kind of airy-fairy, but that's the journey I'm on right now. And I have to say, the universe is coming back. And me being here is a perfect example of that. A week ago, Melinda, you and I were talking on a different platform, and you invited me here, and I'm so grateful. And I would a week ago, I never would have said I'd be on this podcast, which has all these viewers and so many great, smart people that now I'm a part of that group. And gratitude is the biggest thing. I think it's at the heart of this book that I've written, but I think it opens up doors, and that kind of positive look at the world helps you receive things in a more positive way, as opposed to just complaining that things aren't going well or whatever. There's always things going well. Celebrate those things. Think about those things.
Well, my father used to have a saying. He used to say that you're supposed to thank God for the bad days too, right? So that you wouldn't know what good days were if you didn't.
That's a good point.
Bad days, right? So it's like you have to be grateful for the journey, I think.
Yeah.
Is really what I think you're saying. But I think that's so beautiful and poignant, Reid. And I'm so grateful that we met. I'm excited about your book, Appreciated Branding. And when we come right back, we're going to talk about our favorite topic on this show, our Hit It or Quit It panel. So stay with us. We'll be right back.